Nice not to be sitting here by myself, although I don't mind, meditating by myself. I do it all the time. Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about our practice and what it's all about, what it means for us, and that kind of thing. I Googled, well, I didn't Google, it was on YouTube actually. I Googled the most, or YouTubed, the most inspiring video or most inspiring talk ever. And according to well, the census, everybody. And of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger came up, and he was talking about spending time to work out and some aspects of working out, and basically he turned it around into just the aspect of if you do something an hour every day, that it accumulates and you can get really good at it. And he started out saying that anybody that says that they don't have time to go to the gym, for 45 or an hour or hour a day, he said that's just no excuse, because it's something that if you want bad enough that you do. And he started to talk about goals, and it was very inspiring. You check it out sometime if you get a chance. But basically the idea of applying ourselves to something a little bit each day. And my background is a musician, and I lived and breathed the guitar for most of my life. And when I was a kid, I had my first guitar lesson when I was 8 years old, and I played every day, since then, except for the last, ironically, except for the last maybe 3 or 4 years. And but I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing I would do is grab my guitar and practice before I went to school, as a kid, because it was my father actually. He told me that if you do something like that first thing in the morning, there's less inhibitions, and you just get it out of the way. If it's the most important thing for you, just do it, and go on with your day. It makes your whole day go smoother. I think we all experience that. And it's true with learning a musical instrument, or learning a language, or learning anything, or even like writing, writing a book. If you do an hour of it each day, it accumulates. You can achieve almost anything that we put our mind to, especially if we apply ourselves daily, consistently. And of course, the same is true in meditation. We meditate. I think we all agree that's why we're here. That meditation is beneficial for us. Otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? And to be able to apply ourselves each day in a consistent manner, and that leads into what I really wanted to talk about as far as our practice goes, and that is not to push ourselves too hard. I had to remind a couple of students this week not to take it so darn seriously. Have some fun with it, and as far as if we start striving to accomplish something in our meditation, that's exactly what we do not want to be doing, is striving. That's why we meditate in the first place, not to strive. And the only thing that we could say that we're striving to do might be to do it daily. And then from there, we can just really relax into it, especially once we get the basics down. We think about the posture and what our meditation object is, and all these basics. And once we have all that down, all we really have to do is show up. Just to show up each day and do it. And that's why meditation is in a way, it's deceptively easy. I mean, it's very easy to do, but we have to be consistent with it. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem to have the same effect. It doesn't have the same oomph behind it. And I believe it's because we see the benefits each day. Sometimes they're so subtle that we don't notice them, but for the most part, when we practice every day, we see the benefits. If we meditate for a few days and take a few days off, it's kind of like climbing that ladder and then taking a couple steps back down, climbing the ladder, taking a couple steps back down. And that's better than not meditating at all, of course. You know, it's like we're keeping some momentum going, but not the momentum that we would find in the consistency. So there's a story, a Buddhist story about Buddha's attendant. Anybody know who Buddha's primary attendant was? No? Nobody?
Yeah.
Huh?
Primary attendant?
Yeah, attendant, yeah. Buddha's attendant. It was Ananda.
No, I thought that you was talking about the first time here.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. The attendant of Buddha was Ananda, and he was also Ananda's nephew. And I'll read this little. I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it. Make sure that Ananda was Buddha's personal attendant, and again, he was also Buddha's nephew. For the last 20 years of Buddha's life, Ananda was always there with him every day. And besides attending to the Buddha's personal needs, his other duties included representing Buddha on occasions, in other words, showing up where the Buddha couldn't show up, and also he did a great deal of memorizing. He memorized Buddha's teachings, and sometimes he had to repeat Buddha's teachings, and he would have to sometimes repeat them to groups of people when the Buddha wasn't there. So he really had a lot of things to do. I mean, he was really, really busy. But even with that, with that time frame that he had, he didn't really have. People were waking up, becoming enlightened around him, the other monks, but with his duties, he had very little time for spiritual cultivation. As far as having a goal, to become enlightened. His goal was to help out the Buddha. So Ananda was said to be one of the most loving monks of the Buddha's disciples. So he was really compassionate, very, very loving person. And I suspect that the reason that Ananda didn't have a lot of time to reach this goal of enlightenment was also because of that, because he was trying to take care of other people, including the Buddha, but other people as well. So his free time was limited. Ananda still had not attained enlightenment when the Buddha was dying, and the Buddha actually broke, or the Ananda, his attendant, broke down and cried. Where the other monks, they just were very compassionate. There weren't likely a lot of tears because people understood death, and they were, very sad to see the Buddha go. But there a number of times I've read that Ananda was crying a lot when the Buddha was dying. And then after the Buddha died, Ananda found a little bit more time for his own practice, actually, because he didn't have to tend to the Buddha. And then there's another monk, he was an arhat, Kassapa, he was bringing together one of the first Buddhist councils after the Buddha's death. And the reason for that council was to write down and dictate and put all these Buddhist teachings in order. And in order for that to happen, Ananda had to be there. In fact, he was the one that memorized most of the Buddhist teachings and was able to recite them because of his amazing memory that he had. And partly because of that memory, he was always memorizing and working, the opportunity for enlightenment didn't come up for him. And then he wanted to become enlightened before this council started, you know. And he really strived, and he worked at it, and he meditated all the time, and he thought it was the night before the council, and he said, well, he goes, you know, after trying and trying and trying, he said, maybe I should just relax a little bit and become enlightened after the council, you know. And so he was just kind of, you know, exhaled and laid his head down against his pillow, and they said before his head hit the pillow, he became enlightened like that. And the reason for the enlightenment was because he relaxed. He relaxed into it. He stopped the striving. The striving was actually holding him back from becoming enlightened. And we might not feel as if our striving could ever hold us back from becoming enlightened or awake or anything, but it's worth considering. You know, anytime that we're striving, whether it's even for something beneficial, you know, we should really take a look at that and try to, you know, understand how important it is just to relax into the situation, including maybe more so than anything else, meditation. And just, you know, be easy on ourselves. And like I said, the main thing is that we show up, that we show up and do our meditation practice on a daily basis. And showing up for something like this, you know, once a week, I think is a really good idea, or a couple times a week, whatever you do. And you know, the reason we have gatherings like this is just to kind of remind ourselves that we're not the only one. You know, we're not doing it alone. You know, that there's others out there meditating. And I know when as long as I've been meditating, I've always had a weekly group. You know, whether it's once or twice a week, and sometimes more, especially when I'm teaching like this. It's wonderful to get together on a regular basis, but we still have to have that home practice, you know, to keep that consistency up. Have our little place at home and our cushion or whatever, and if you don't have a cushion, have some blankets or something, you know, something that is comfortable for you. And practice consistently. Does everybody have a consistent practice? I see one. Do you have a consistent practice?
Yeah, it's just a little different. I usually use the tones. It's like a constant tone that I play.
And you focus on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your meditation object is, you know, as long as we set our intention and know what our meditation object is. If you're using sound, that's fine. You know, a lot of us here use the breath, and whenever I mention the breath, I'm just referring to the meditation object. You know.
I do the breathing too, but I just have that. It's just I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, it's like a monotone kind of, or sometimes they call it a white noise, but a white noise is usually a static. And I use water, you know, the running water on Insight Timer app. I like the running water. It drowns out, you know, the airplanes and everything. And I use sound as well, and the breath, just like you. Yeah. But again, consistency is king. it'll make a difference in our lives, particularly in the area of meditation. But that's true with everything. You know, if you want to write that thick novel, sit down and every day and do it, or you know, learn that musical instrument or that language or whatever it is. But the reason I'm talking about this is because of our meditation practice. And if you don't have a consistent practice, you know, please consider doing that. You know, even if it's 15 minutes a day, but ideally, you know, a little bit more than that. But just let it lengthen on its own. So, how many of you are new here? Nobody? Everybody's been here at some time or another.
I'm new.
You're new?
Yeah.
And okay, all right. Well, we do the little introduction that I just did, and kind of an invitation, and then we will meditate in a few moments for about a little bit more than 30 minutes, about 35 minutes. The first part of that will be guided. I'll guide us through it, and then there will be a great deal of silence in there for us to sit with. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. We are, if you're wondering about the camera, we're streaming live, you know, on YouTube, so that people have the opportunity to join us wherever they might be, anywhere. So please make yourself comfortable. Gently close the eyes if you like. Let's bring the attention to the body. Notice how the body feels in its posture. So we're not trying to really manipulate or change anything. We might want to, you know, set an intention. Our intention for this particular practice is that we will meditate until 8 o'clock. That's about 35 minutes. 8 o'clock Arizona time. And then we want to really try to make sure that there's energy within our practice. If we get drowsy or anything, we might want to use the breath to kind of wake us up a little bit, in that we focus on the inhalation of the breath. And that's a practice that many people use just to kind of get a little bit more energy, focusing on the top of the inhalation. Not changing the breath, but just focusing on it a little bit differently. Otherwise, again, when I talk about the breath, this is a meditation object that I think most of us use in this room. The breath is the most popular meditation object, and it's really an ideal area to focus on, because it's constantly moving, yet it's constantly there. It can be very subtle. Sometimes we can easily be aware of it, especially when there's a lack of it. But yet, when we're not focused on it, it still happens on its own. And so it can be very exciting, and sometimes very boring, and sometimes really non-existent, depending on what we're placing our awareness upon. Whether we're trying to cultivate the mind in the area of a little bit of concentration, like bringing our attention back to the breath, again and again, or if we're lucky, we can just rest our attention on the breath. But generally, we notice that our attention wanders off. We notice that, and then just gently bring it back to the breath. And the breath can mean different things for each of us. It can mean noticing the breath at the tip of the nose, noticing the movement of the breath someplace else in the body. Wherever we feel it the most is usually the best place to focus our attention. And sometimes we use the breath just to, as an instrument to help us stay focused by counting the breath. Breathing in, breathing out, counting 1. Breathing in, breathing out, counting 2. We can count up to 10, or even some people count up to 100. It really doesn't matter as long as we keep that focus on the breath. Sometimes we can set those numbers aside and just rest with the breath. Notice that its movement, maybe the coolness when it comes in and the warmth as it leaves. And so this practice of breath meditation is also a part of concentration practices. It's also a part of mindfulness or awareness meditation practices. Because it's just simply an object that we're placing our attention on. It's keeping us grounded. Otherwise, the fear is that our attention will wander into the past and go off into the future, and we'll just start thinking like we have been doing all day long. And we want to tame that down a little bit. And that's why we use the meditation objects such as the breath to do this. And when the activity of the mind, particularly the thinking, subsides a little bit, we get an opportunity to see our true nature, who we are beyond the thinking mind, the obsessive thoughts. And we understand who and what we are. And generally we find out that we're very loving and happy beings. And so if we use the breath, if you're new to using the breath, just again find a place in the body where you can feel the movement of the air without manipulating the breath, without trying to change anything or push anything. Find that area where the breath connects with the body. And just apply a light attention to it. And again, we're not trying to strive or push too hard. Just concentrate on that one single point. If we notice that the mind is very, very busy, we might want to try counting the breaths. And then after the turbulent mind subsides, we can come back to just resting with it. Although some people do continue counting for their entire practice. There's nothing wrong with that either. And this is basic breath meditation. something that's been practiced for over 3,000 years. Thank you, everyone. If you have everybody have a copy of this? We'll recite this together. This is the Loving Kindness Sutra. It's just a tradition that we've been doing for many years. And it talks of loving kindness, and we can always use more than that, more love, more kindness. So we'll recite this together. To attain the state of peace, one skilled in goodness should be able, upright, perfectly upright, gentle in speech, kind, and free from pride, contented, easily satisfied, with limited duties and unburdened livelihood, controlled in senses, discreet, reserved, and not blindly attached to groups. One should not commit the slightest wrong, that the wise might censor, wishing, may there be happiness and security, may all beings be happy. Whatever beings there are, whether feeble or strong, tall or short, large, medium, or small, microscopic or mammoth, leaving none, seen or unseen, living near or far away, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. Let one not deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither in anger nor in ill will should one wish another harm. Just as a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so, one should cultivate a limitless concern for all living beings. Extend loving kindness throughout the world, without limitation, above, below, and across, free of obstruction, enmity, or hostility. Whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, one should diligently sustain this mindfulness. This is called sublime living. Without holding narrow views, but being endowed with broad vision and avoiding attachment to sense desires, the virtuous are not born again into this world. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us, may no difficulties come to us, and may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you. Thank you. I hope everybody had a nice meditation. It was very quiet in here, except for a few airplanes that came by. And it's just something you have to get used to here. I mentioned, that the meditation that we were doing is breath meditation. I think I mentioned that a couple of times. And that's just a very basic a way of describing meditation using the breath. But if somebody's using the breath to, for a tool for concentration, or if somebody's using the breath to as an object to allow themselves, to notice the mind wandering off and then catching that and bringing it back, as most of us probably did. Those we're really using. Those are two different kinds of meditations. The concentration and the mindfulness-based practices. Not to confuse things, but basically, when we're focusing on the breath, we can call it breath meditation, and it's very beneficial, very, very useful, because we understand where our mind goes to, and we usually realize that it's going to the past and the future. I say that a lot, but that's where the thinking mind goes, and that's where not where the most comfortable thing is, for us to be, thinking about something that happened or something that we wish to have happen. It's an option. I mean, hopefully it could be an option, but preferably what I mean by that is that preferably what we want to do is rest in that present moment, between, where the mind is not going this way or this way, if this is the past and this is the future. where it's just kind of resting right there. And that's why we use the breath. We focus on the breath, and when we're focused on it, we're present. We're right there. Sometimes for just a moment, but and then the more we practice and the more consistent we are, the more we can stay there. And that's why I was talking about consistency before. I think most of you heard that. Any questions about practice? There might be some newer meditators here. Any questions at all? Anything I can help with? I know when I started out meditating, I had questions, but I didn't ask them because I didn't want anybody to think that I didn't know anything. But I should have, you know. And this room, it's a little bit different because we're all here for each other. You know, we're here to help each other out. And so if there's anything I can help you with, you know, just, you know, put it out there. No extra charge. Yesterday I gave a talk about another form of meditation, something else that we touched on tonight, and that's guided meditation. And guided meditation is something that was never practiced years ago. You know, the Buddha never guided anybody through a meditation per se. Guided meditation is something that's kind of a product of the West, probably, and a lot of reasons. But the primary one is because our technology, our audio technology, we can record something, and we can play it for others, and then we can you know, turn on YouTube or one of the many apps, you know, and get so many different wonderful guided meditations. And I think they're wonderful for people that are kind of starting out in meditation, maybe people with a really, really busy mind, because that guiding, you know, we still have to focus, we still have to have a certain amount of concentration, but with the guiding it's pretty easy because we're listening. We're listening to somebody guide us through. And whether it's something like what we just did where I gave you the instructions, you know, we talked about the posture of the body, and then I brought your attention to the breath, and then I mentioned a couple of things that we can use the breath for, and you know, talked about the breath and how we can use it as the object and why we do that. The other types of guided meditation are, there's really two different types. One of them is where we or somebody takes us or we take them through a process of strictly stress reduction, relaxation, where we take them through a journey, you know, through a garden or a park or something. It's kind of like guiding somebody through a beautiful, effortless hike in the mountains, for example. Or it could be anything like that. I know that a lot of times, more and more you hear them on airplanes. People that might have anxiety for flight anxiety. Sometimes the stewardess, I hear them, they'll tell somebody to turn to channel 27 or whatever on with their headphones, and these are usually international flights, and there will be a guided meditation, you know, a channel for guided meditation for these people to relax and listen to these things. It's really wonderful. Lufthansa Airline was the first one that I came upon, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. But it really, in many ways, the guiding is, you know, just purely a stress reduction. The other type of guided meditation is a little bit more therapeutic, where you might go into the practice. You still might be guided through a forest or a mountain scene or something, a path, but you have some questions where you ask a guru or something. You meet a guru or somebody in your meditation, so there's a purpose behind the guiding, and it's usually therapeutic. So there's definitely something that we're bringing back out of the meditation. Another thing might be that we are meditating, and the guiding aspect of it takes us through some different scenarios where these symbolic things come up for us. Let's say we're walking down a road, and this is in meditation. Right? You're guided walking down a road, and you, upon the road, next to the road, you find a key. And then after the meditation, you'd ask that person, what does that key look like? What was it made out of? Was it old? Was it new? Was it a golden key, or was it an old rusty one? And these metaphoric symbols they can mean something. And so again, the guiding is a little bit what I call therapeutic guiding. A lot of these guided meditations are related to hypnotherapy. Not necessarily hypnosis, but hypnotherapy, where we're purposely calming somebody and trying to get into their subconscious a little bit so that they either relax or that they come up with some answers for something. And we don't really do much of that type of practice here, not on Wednesday nights, but it is nice for students and for other meditation teachers to realize what the different aspects of guided meditation and what they're for and why they're there. The guiding that we did is, with the instructions that we did before our meditation, is something that I do frequently, and I think it can be very, very beneficial for a lot of people. All forms of meditation are beneficial for people. It's a wonderful practice. So I am assuming. Let me ask you. The first part of the meditation, was it easier than the last part? For anybody? Any comments? Not necessarily.
No. I get on rails about how my practice and how I was taught and stuff, and then sometimes I'm listening to you and I'm trying to do what I'm doing, and there's like a little diversion there, and then I have to go, wait a minute, just go with the flow here, follow this, I get on rails. Then during the middle of the meditation, I'm like, okay, I've got the breath, I'm resting in the breath, everything's good, and then all of a sudden I go off into daydreamland, and I'm like, oh God, how much time have I just wasted doing that? And I go back to the breath, and then all of a sudden the gong goes, and I'm like, okay, I got it now, gong.
Yeah, right then.
Like that.
When you do that, do you notice? Does your mind generally go into the past or the future? Do you know which one it goes
no,
to?
just,
I mean, you say, are you in fantasy?
no. I hear my old teacher, because I was with him for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's in the past. Yeah, you're correct.
Past, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Is he coaching you?
He's doing a guided meditation just like you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and both of you are the same most of the time.
Huh. So he uses your teacher used the same format, kind of, as far as.
Absolutely. Tonight
okay.
was probably more matched well than anything I've heard. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
Insight meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most, they hear online, we're all in the same kind of deal there. Following the breath.
Starting out with the breath, and then. Yeah.
And then going.
Yeah, usually when we hear the recordings, it's continuous. It's going, because because the guiding meditation is a recording,
Right.
and that's how it works. But
But he would do the same thing. He would just,
yeah.
then all of a sudden there's silence, from
Oh, okay, wonderful.
the guided,
Yeah.
and then we'd go through that step for step.
Yeah, interesting. Good.
Just the voices in my head usually.
The
Matter
voices.
of calming them all down.
We all have
You
little
guys
voices.
are fine. It's the other ones that bother me.
Yeah. Anybody else have the guiding easier, or?
counting, and then, I guess one time you were talking about pure energy.
Uh,
you know? And then I actually started doing the pure light, pure love. You know, breathing in, pure, and then love. I don't know, you think, because you said love, happiness, I just like clung to the love word.
Okay,
So,
that's fine.
but I don't know, just something, because I, trying to keep those airplanes, it keeps me focused on, you know, the now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I was talking, as far as energy, I was talking about, you know, kind of using, when we focus on, when we breathe in and we focus on the top of the inhalation, it seems to bring us a little bit more energy into the body.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. And I use that, and I think a lot of people, other people do use that, like if they're drowsy or something. And sometimes when you meditate, you know, in the evening like this, people get drowsy, but not as bad as 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when a lot of people really get drowsy. You know, that head bobbing starts, you know, that kind of thing. But different techniques, and you know, there's, you know, for anybody to say that there's one way to meditate or one meditation object, it's just, it's not true. I mean, there's different ways to meditate, and a lot of different definitions of it. Sometimes people talk of meditating, you know, off the cushion, which in most traditions they call that mindfulness. You know, being mindful. When we're not sitting. So in other words, is people might say that they're, I'll ask them if they meditate, for example. You know, are you a meditator? And they go, yeah, but I meditate when I'm doing the dishes, you know, that kind of thing, where they, you know, they feel the dishes and they feel the water, and they bring themselves in the present moment, and they might call that their meditation. And you know, some people say that their meditation is their morning walk, you know, that kind of thing. So they're using the term meditation as a kind of a mindfulness, you know, the word that's substituting for mindfulness. It's interesting. And I think meditation, you know, as far as the definition of meditation and what it is, it's a little bit different for everybody. And you know, in the teacher training program that we do, the very first class we have people define meditation in their own terms, because it's different for everybody. You can't really use one word to define meditation. You know, we could use awareness or concentration, you know, these kinds of things, but it's usually a combination of all of that. You know, being aware and being concentrated and being mindful and cultivating the mind, you know, training the mind to some aspect. It's a very individual practice, let me put it that way. You know, we all have our own kind of thing, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's not my way or the highway, or your way or the highway, or anything like that. It's the kind of practice that, as long as, you know, I feel that the idea, for me anyway, and for the people I work with, is to, again, be in that presence, come into that presence, understand who we are, you know, at a little higher or deeper level, you know who we are beyond the thinking mind, who and what we are, understanding that. And of course, what follows that is, you know, a clarity, and that clarity of mind helps us out in the everyday world, as far as organizing our thoughts and organizing our day. I think it's a very, very important practice, and if everybody practiced meditation, it would be a completely different world out there, you know.
You know, a person once that meditated with their eyes open, they studied in Thailand, and that was the way that they did it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was reading something from the Tibetans call it Rigpa, where they look only at the periphery, not so much focusing, and so much, you know, like we get so laser on each other, locked in with that ego.
Yeah.
You know, so their practice is to kind of broaden that view and look from the edges,
Mm-hmm.
you know, our periphery, the whole picture. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. You know, seeing different ways to Well, in the mindfulness domain for that Tibet thing,
Mhm.
because they close it up.
Yeah, and the Tibetans, they have visualization, a great deal of visualization techniques too, and they actually, that's their tantric practices. Nothing to do with sex or anything, but it's their tantric practices. We often relate it to sex, but it isn't. It's really just visualization, where we visualize our guru or our teacher, before us. And, some of those practices are very, very beneficial, especially like in the West here. If we're having trouble with somebody in our workplace, for example, when we meditate, we can actually, if we imagine them sitting right with us when we're meditating, it can really soften things the next time we see that person. And if it's a person that we see every day and we always kind of butting heads with them, definitely try meditating when you're at home, try meditating and imagining that person sitting right in front of you or sitting next to you. And if you do that on a consistent basis, again, that consistency, when you see that person the next time, it'll be different. You'll look at them differently, and even though they might not be meditating about you, with you, but they'll see a change in you, how you view them, and then they'll view you differently too. It'll just change. I've used that many times. Very powerful. But there's again, I guess the point is that our meditation practice, it can be abstract. It can be very, very simple. They're all beneficial. When I teach somebody, or most of the teaching I do is basically what we just did here tonight. I think that's the most very basic, easy practice, and one that I see a lot of benefit from. And I've seen literally thousands of people benefit from it. You mentioned Thailand a little while ago. That was where I got most of my training, and we would run these retreats. There would be 100 people there, and sometimes very, very young people, and they would completely change. The retreats were like 10 days is all, but by getting to the 5th or 6th day, especially the kids would be completely different animals, and just a real softening for them. And it was, I've seen that happen with a lot of people, the adults as well. Really something. And it's just from the simple practice of meditation. Sitting meditation and then walking meditation. Because the reason I say that is because it was a retreat situation. Alternating between sitting and walking. And that reminds me, we got a couple of things coming up here that I have to or should mention. First of all, next Saturday at the temple, there's an 8-week meditation course that's starting there. It's based on one of my books, actually, Meditation, the Great Teacher. It's the typical 8-week course. It's $50 for the entire 8 weeks. And then the books are available there as well. So if you're interested in that, there's some flyers here. So that starts on Saturday. You can register right there if you're interested. And
Is that this Saturday coming up?
yeah, yeah, this Saturday. Yeah, right around the corner. And yeah, for that you can register right there. Whoops, this is. Well, let's see. I thought I had everything listed here, but we have some workshops and things coming up, and all you really have to do is on the wall there. There's all the flyers. So just take a look through those, and There's a mala making workshop coming up here. I'm sure there's room in that still.
Seventh meditation retreat, 7th of April,
Is that on 7th?
April 7th.
Thank you.
Saturday.
April 7th.
Sunday.
Sundays, yeah, one day, the retreat, a one-day retreat that we have. If you've never done a retreat, it's a good one. It's all, for,
Is that going to be here or?
no, right here, yeah, right here. And then there's of course, a longer 4-day retreat at the end of May. And then there's April 2nd is the direct pointing, some deeper teachings in Buddhism and non-duality. So that's going to be starting April 2nd on Tuesday,
Every other Tuesday.
every other Tuesday, yeah. So I think there's 3 of them this month. And I think that's about it. We'll be doing, having more workshops throughout. We're going to try workshops in the summer too. That we did that not last year, but the year before, and it worked out really well. Get some different people in here and things like that. So if you want more information, about these things that come up, make sure that you give me your email address. If I don't have it, you can write it on the book there where you walk in, on the easel, I guess you call it, or podium. I don't know, what do you call that thing? But anything from anybody? Any questions? Anything I can help with? Very quiet group. Yeah. Must be the baseball game. But